I hope you enjoy this hero's journey into the realm of philosophy, psychology, and physics. If you want to help me create more content like this, please subscribe and consider sponsoring me here on YouTube. I also want to thank the Platonic Mystery School of the Divine Infinite Being for sponsoring this course, and you can check that school out at divineinfinitebeing.com. Expulsion from the garden, self-awareness equals knowledge of death. We've been analyzing Ernest Becker's book, The Denial of Death, where he distills 20th century psychology down to its essence, which he believes brings us full circle back to the still towering figure of Soren Kierkegaard. He says self-awareness, which is unique to the human species, brings with it the fear of death. We know that our consciousness will die when the animal body in which we are imprisoned dies. So he says the only solution to that fear of death is to take a leap of faith that each of us is an immortal hero serving God at a cosmic scale. So only everything will satisfy the human imagination, because the human imagination is infinite. So it will only be happy with some kind of infinite nourishment. And that nourishment is this belief that we are heroes serving God, the ultimate meaningful life. So let's just read here from his book. The foundation stone for Kierkegaard's view of man is the myth of the fall, the ejection of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. Like Adam and Eve before eating fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, animals are blissfully unaware that they are going to die in the future. Animals have keen awareness, but only humans are aware that we are aware. Like two mirrors facing each other, self-reflection opens a door to the idea of an infinite regress of selfhood. Yet that same door leads to the dreaded realization that our unbounded self-awareness will end with the death of the animal body. Self-awareness or self-reflection expels every human from the Eden of animal ignorance into the fear of death. Or, putting it another way, normality is neurosis and vice versa. It's normal for the human being to be neurotic because we have self-reflection, which brings up to us the idea of living infinitely, forever, eternally, and yet we also see the future, that our material bodies will die, and so that conflict of opposites, our animal body and our seemingly immortal self-consciousness, creates this untenable neurotic situation. The symbolic self. Henri Bergson on the limitations of language. Coming full circle to the religious position Freud rejected, post-Freudian psychologists like Otto Rank and Carl Jung believed that the essence of the human species is the paradoxical conflict between our physical body and self-consciousness, what Becker calls our symbolic self, the unfortunate side effect of which is dread, also known as anxiety or neurosis. Becker calls self-awareness the symbolic self as opposed to the bodily self because the human mind lives in a world of symbolic representations. Henri Bergson wrote An Introduction to Metaphysics in 1903. He said that there are two methods of acquiring knowledge, analysis and intuition. So the symbolic self, that's what fears death. But what does he mean by symbolic self? So the human mind thinks in terms of language. Language is a series of symbols, so is mathematics. We're going to see how Henri Bergson helps us understand the limitations of language. You can't have knowledge of the infinite God or even knowledge of yourself by stringing words together just so, or by stringing mathematical equations together in just the right way. But if you do arrange your symbolic knowledge appropriately, it can help you have an intuition, a direct encounter with the self and the supreme self. And it's only by taking a leap of faith in the supreme self that the human beings can escape neurosis and see ourselves as immortal heroes in the eyes of God. Analysis, physics, and psychology. So Henri Bergson said there's two ways of acquiring knowledge: analysis and intuition. So analysis provides relative knowledge by observing something from the outside, from different points of view, then using symbols such as words or numbers to relate or compare it to a group of other things that are similar to but different from it. For example, we use the same word blue to describe the sky, someone's eyes, or even someone's emotional state. We use the word eye to describe your eye, mine, and even the eye of a storm. Although our minds occupy a world of symbols, Even an infinite accumulation of ever more precise, scientifically tested symbolic descriptions of a thing will never tell us what the thing is in itself. So you can analyze the computer screen that you're looking at right now, or whatever device you're using to take this class, and you can describe it with words. You can describe the exact shape and the color. You can describe its origins, the manufacturer. You can weigh it and give a numerical number for how much it weighs. You can analyze every little bit of the empirically observable device with the most precise scientific instruments of knowledge at your disposal. But no matter how perfectly your description and how perfect the mathematical equations are that give its physical parameters, it'll never bring you one little bit closer to knowing what it is like to be that computer in itself. What is unique about the computer that you're observing? Because all of the symbols that you use are comparing it to an infinite number of other things. It's got a rectangular screen. There's an infinite number of other rectangular objects. So analysis can give us relative knowledge by relating things to other things, but it can't give us knowledge of things in itself. And that is what he calls metaphysics, knowledge of a thing by stepping inside that thing and becoming the thing. That's the only way you can have an intuition of something. Intuition of the self, metaphysics. Intuition provides absolute knowledge of something from the inside. This metaphysical knowledge comes all at once. It does not unfold over time from a string of symbols. An intuition cannot be described completely with symbols, though the appropriate sequence of symbols can bend the mind into the appropriate shape to receive an intuition. If psyche equals singularity, then it is possible to have a direct metaphysical intuition of ourselves, each other, and everything else in the cosmos, including the cosmos itself. So in the movie The Matrix with Keanu Reeves, there's one scene where he's speaking to Spoon Boy. So these are all potential candidates for the one, the Messiah, who's going to save the human species from the machine-made virtual reality in which they're all imprisoned. To me, it seems like an analogy for Plato's cave allegory, which we'll be discussing at length later. But at any rate, in this scene, Keanu Reeves speaks to Spoon Boy, who looks like a Buddhist monk, and he's holding a spoon and he's bending the spoon with his mind. And so Neo, the character that Keanu Reeves plays, wants to learn how to do that. The Spoon Boy says, "Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth." Neo, what truth? Spoon Boy, there is no spoon. Neo, there is no spoon? Spoon Boy, then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself. And then Neo holds a spoon and he gives it a shot and he bends his head over and then the spoon bends with him. So that is metaphysics. You can only know something by being the thing. You can only know something absolutely, meaning completely and wholly, from within. So is it possible to have an intuition of anything? How can I have an intuition of the spoon if I'm not the spoon? How can I be inside the spoon? Well, if psyche equals singularity, then each of us is one with everything else, with all other objects and people and anything you can think of in any of the infinite number of universes in the multiverse, because everything is contained within the point of infinite density, the gravitational singularity. And according to quantum entanglement, any two particles that were ever in contact always remain in immediate contact, no matter how far apart they're spread in space. So intuition, if psyche equals singularity, intuition is possible. It's possible to have an intuition of yourself. There is actually a self that you can have insights into, and that self is, although unique and individual, inconceivably simultaneously one with every other self. Analysis can't give you an intuition of the self, but analysis can prepare the ground and make it more probable that a sudden intuition will occur. Analysis leads to intuition of the self, jnana yoga, and academia. This class provides a sequence of symbols drawn from philosophy, psychology, and physics that is intended to invoke an intuition of God, understood as the omnicentric singularity and all-encompassing horizon. The hope is that by bending our minds into the shape of the symbolic concepts presented here, jnana yoga, we may tune into an intuition of the underlying archetype of the self, to whom we may then surrender our loving service, bhakti yoga. Each slide serves as an asana of the subtle material body. An asana is a yogic posture, a geometrical configuration of the human body. As we will see, Plato founded academia to promote the same basic strategy of opening the eye of the soul to the idea of the good through a specific series of philosophical speculations. So that picture to the left is a woman doing the sun salutations, a series of yogic postures known as the sun salutation, which is appropriate for Plato because the idea of the good he compares to the spiritual sun, of which the visible sun is like a shadowy dream reflection. So the point is, taking this class, bending your mind around these difficult concepts like the history of the gravitational singularity and the history of philosophy that we'll be seeing later. It's a strain of the subtle material mental body, but the point is it's tuning in the mind, making it more ready for an intuition of the self. Psychology reveals the cause of neurosis. Religion reveals the cure. According to Becker, though it can spot the cause of neurosis, psychology cannot cure the anxiety inherent in the individual's abhorrence of the material limitations culminating in death inherited with the body of our species. Only a Kierkegaardian leap of faith in God and the immortal soul can overcome the natural terror of our bodily predicament, which is why taking that leap is the fundamental problem facing our quest for psychological health or wholeness, which Jung called individuation. So this is Becker's main point. Psychology has revealed to us that the human being will only be fully happy if we believe that we are serving God and that what we do is of infinite importance in the eyes of God on a universal scale. So psychology can tell us that, but psychology can't satisfy that desire. Psychology can't present you with God, which is why you might say Carl Jung's psychology borderlines on religion, because he does talk about the archetype of the self, or the God archetype. Jung talks about the various religions, and he acknowledges that each of those various religions will say that our God is the one true God. Other gods might be similar to the descriptions that these people have of God. Some of them might be accurate, but we have the one true source that's 100% accurate, whereas Carl Jung would say all of the various religious descriptions of God are projected from the archetype of God in the collective unconscious of every human being. So whatever, that brings us back to the idea of the perennial philosophy that we discussed before. But the point is, for a human being to be healthy psychologically, to feel like we have heroic meaning in life, to achieve individuation, we have to believe in God. And that requires some kind of a religious leap of faith. Cosmic narcissism, hopelessly absorbed with ourselves. So this is from Becker's book, The Denial of Death. Freud discovered that each of us repeats the tragedy of the mythical Greek Narcissus. We are hopelessly absorbed with ourselves. The pleasures of incorporation and expansion can be fed limitlessly in the domain of symbols and so on into immortality. But it is too all-absorbing and relentless to be an aberration. It expresses the heart of the creature, the desire to stand out, to be the one in creation. Each of us wants to be first in the universe, representing in himself all life. So to be the one in creation. One of the main points of this class is that the laws of psychology mirror the laws of physics. That was Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli's theory. Because mind and matter emerge from the archetype of the self, or the God archetype, the laws of physics and the laws of psychology mirror each other. So here, Becker, summarizing the laws of psychology discovered by successive psychologists, and he's pointing now to Freud, says that each of us is like the mythical Greek Narcissus. That myth is about a beautiful young man who is so beautiful that he wasn't satisfied with the beauty of other people. There's various versions of the myth, but in one, named Echo, saw him walking through the woods and she fell in love with him, and he felt like somebody was watching him. He said, "Who's there?" Echo responded, "Who's there?" because that's her name, Echo. That's where the word echo comes from. Anyway, she tried to embrace him and he rejected her. So she pined away for the rest of her life. And then he was cursed by another goddess, so that when he saw his reflection in a puddle of water, he fell so deeply in love with his own reflection, and then he died of heartache because he couldn't be with the one he loved, which is himself. So, hopelessly self-absorbed, tragically self-absorbed, that is what Freud says each of us is. We always spend most of the day thinking about ourselves. It's not that we necessarily think, "Oh, I'm so beautiful." Nevertheless, we are preoccupied with ourselves. "Oh, I feel this way. Oh, I feel that way. What am I going to do? How's that going to affect me? Me. We have this instinctive desire to be first in the universe, the one in creation, representing in himself all life. Well, that fundamental human psychological fact, which expresses the heart of the creature, mirrors the physics of a gravitational singularity, which makes sense if psyche equals singularity. Each of us is an absolute part and parcel of an omnipotent point of infinite density, an all-absorbing, infinitely self-absorbed point that collapses into itself at an infinite rate, but which simultaneously stands outside of the universe as the one, omnicentric source from which the entire creation expands, the first principle of the universe that contains in itself all life. So that parallel between the equation psyche equals singularity and Becker's description of Freud's description of the inherent narcissism of the human species recalled me to a quote from Carl Jung that we read earlier from his book, The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. He's describing the archetypal self as the central point, which also contains everything in its periphery, which is so similar to the inside-out black hole universe. But the one sentence that really stuck out to me while reading and comparing this idea of this inherent narcissism is this one. The energy of the central point is manifested in the almost irresistible compulsion and urge to become what one is. So a singularity is collapsing into itself at an infinite rate. It's a point of infinite gravity, infinitely self-absorbed. Just this parallel between what Becker wrote and the physics of the singularity seem to be worthy of a slide all its own. And here's the picture. It's my book. The center of the universe is the singularity, and there's a peacock. Proud as a peacock, a symbol of vanity. In Hinduism, Krishna wears a peacock feather in his hair. And there's even one story of him washing a temple floor, and he sees his own reflection in the puddle of water on the floor, and he starts to drool. He finds himself so beautiful. That also captures this description of the archetypal self. If that's the description of God, if God is hopelessly self-absorbed, and if each of us is a part and parcel of God, then we also will be hopelessly self-absorbed. That doesn't mean, however, that we're all selfish and callous towards others and find no one else attractive, because in Hinduism the slogan is Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. We are inconceivably simultaneously one with each other and different. Everyone is a part and parcel with everyone else. So the infinite self-love we have expands also to include everyone else we see. If we truly believe that psyche equals singularity and that everyone else is a part and parcel of the archetypal self, the ultimate omnicentric singularity, then naturally your own instinct of self-love and narcissistic self-absorption will include everyone else. The main problem of human life: how empirically true is the cultural hero system? So, according to Becker, the potentially most liberating question of all, the main problem of human life: how empirically true is the cultural hero system that sustains and drives men? But he has to feel and believe that what he is doing is truly heroic, timeless, and supremely meaningful. The crisis of modern society is precisely that the youth no longer feel heroic in the plan for action that their culture has set up. They don't believe it is empirically true to the problems of their lives and times. We are living in a crisis of heroism that reaches into every aspect of our social life. We need to believe we are immortal heroes serving God on a universal cosmic scale. That's the overriding theme of this class. But the problem is, the cultural plan for living a human life doesn't satisfy that urge. People don't believe in the ancient religions as fully as they used to because it seems to be at odds with modern science. That is what caused the crisis of heroism. Instead of seeing ourselves as eternal souls participating in the universal soul, as Plato taught and as Christianity also taught, having been merged with Plato, especially by St. Augustine, that was a proper cosmic stage upon which to perform heroics for God. But if you think that consciousness is a byproduct of Darwinian evolution from little bits of matter that float around in three rigid dimensions of space, then where's the room for cosmic heroism? It doesn't make sense. It seems infantile. It seems superstitious. It seems like a fairy tale. And that causes this crisis of heroism. I'm saying that the evolution of physics after Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin in the 20th century brings us full circle back to the Platonic cosmic stage. where we can see ourselves as these immortal, infinitely self-absorbed and self-absorbing heroes who are infinitely meaningful to an omnipotent God. To see or not to see, physics, psychology, and empiricism. So on the previous slide, Becker asked the question, how empirically true is the hero system? So empiricism says knowledge comes from your 5 sense organs. If you can't see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, or hear it, then it's just a figment of your imagination. So that raises a problem. If you can't sense God or the soul or the spiritual world with any of your 5 bodily sense organs, then it would be impossible to believe that the hero system is empirically true. So what I'm saying is that the equation psyche equals singularity, although the psyche and the singularity are themselves not observable with any of our 5 sense organs, their effects are. And it's important to note here that Carl Jung included mental images in your dreams as empirical observations. Even though you don't sense them with your bodily sense organs, you do perceive them as images in your mind, just the way you perceive your sights. If you look at a chair, it's represented as an image in your mind. You see the same kind of things in your dreams. The point is, he considered the mandala images in your dreams that arise from the self-archetype as empirical observations. Having said that, let me just read what I said in the slide and then I'll comment on it. Neither the self nor the singularity are empirically observable, but their psychic and physical effects are, in a way, moreover, that mirrors each other, thereby validating Jung and Paley's scientific prediction about a mirror symmetry between psychology and physics. Mandala images in the psyche, gravitational effects of black holes. So that picture to the left there is the first photograph of the effects of a black hole. You can't see a black hole because it's the point where space-time is receding toward the central singularity at the speed of light, so no light can come out, so there's no way you could see it. There's no photons coming from the black hole, but you can see its gravitational effects on space-time surrounding it. What you see there is an accretion disk. Gases fall into a black hole at such a rapid rate that the friction creates a bright light, and that's what you're seeing there. The strings of string theory, the compactified dimensions of space around which they are wound, as well as all the universes outside our own, are also currently unobservable by material methods. Nevertheless, most materialist physicists today embrace string theory. So physicists who are not believers in the soul or God nevertheless embrace string theory despite the fact that you can't see strings either, or the compactified dimensions of space around which they're wound, or any of the other universes in the multiverse. Michio Kaku doesn't believe in God, but he believes in string theory. Brian Greene doesn't believe in God or the soul, but he believes in string theory, and of course Leonard Susskind's in the same boat. Even Susskind says, perhaps we should simply accept worlds beyond the horizon in the same way that we accept that other people have an impenetrable interior life. I thought that was an ironic comparison, considering I am saying the horizon of the cosmos is the collective unconscious mind, which is the interior life of all of us. But the point here is, in the previous slide, Becker said that the most liberating question is how empirically true is the hero system. So we have to analyze what we mean by empiricism. If you want to be a strict empiricist like David Hume, then you'd say, yeah, well, guess what? I can't see, smell, touch, taste, or hear space itself, empty space, or time, or causal links, the idea of cause and effect. I see event A happen, and I see event B regularly follow event A, but I don't see any causal link. Space and time and causality are the fundamental ingredients of Newtonian physics. And what Hume was saying is, Newtonian physics doesn't give us any certain absolute knowledge of the laws of nature. It just tells us that this is the way events have unfolded in the past, and they are likely to unfold that way in the future. But the entire idea of past and future and space itself are not empirically observable. So if you want to be a strict empiricist and say, well, I'm not going to believe in God or the soul because none of my 5 sense organs can encounter such a being, then you have to give up on the idea of laws of physics and causality and space-time itself. Or you could moderate the demand for empirical knowledge and expand your definition of empiricism like Carl Jung does, which I think is reasonable given the mathematical precision of the descriptions of these things, strings and these compactified dimensions of space, the multiverse. And what is empirically observable is how the mathematics that describe this empirically unobservable holographic string theory which is made of these empirically unobservable things like strings and other universes, nevertheless, it so perfectly mirrors the psychology that Jung describes, and that was a prediction Jung and Pali made, that the laws of psychology will mirror the laws of physics. The laws of psychology are empirically observable as Jung's books. You can read them. The laws of physics are empirically observable in Susskind's books. You can read them. And when you compare the two, you'll see how perfectly they parallel each other. That is empirically observable, and I think it gives us a good reason to take a leap of faith in the equation psyche equals singularity. Transference as a taming of terror. Children project the universe into their parents. So we're continuing this analysis of Becker's book and the idea of transference, projecting your unconscious mind onto other people, projecting your idea of power and awesomeness and the fear of terrible things onto other people. So let me just read here from Ernest Becker. Rank understood the child could not out of himself muster the stamina and the authority necessary to live in full expansiveness with limitless horizons of perception and experience. The child takes natural awe and terror and focuses them on individual beings, which allows him to find the power and the horror all in one place instead of diffused throughout a chaotic universe. Mirabile, that's an Italian word, a miracle. The full expansiveness of the horizon of the cosmos and everything it encompasses is simultaneously focused all in one point, the gravitational singularity. Mirabile. So you see again, this idea of transference and the description of it by psychologists, how perfectly it parallels the idea of a gravitational singularity. This full expansiveness with limitless horizons. Well, that's like the cosmic horizon. It's hard for us to imagine ourselves on that grand of a scale. So we project that inherent desire for full expansiveness onto other people. When you're a child, you project that onto your parents. They become like cosmic gods to you. All of the horror and all of the love and the power of all of everything that you can experience gets distilled into your parents. So continuing, seeing that cosmic mandala as the God archetype in us all enables the child in us all to live in full expansiveness with limitless horizons of perception and experience, confident in our immortality as heroic actors on the cosmic stage, performing for each other and the all-knowing eye of God. So, if we are all one with the omnicentric singularity, then we can engage in the psychological process of transference onto this idea of God. When we see our identity with the gravitational singularity, that enables us to live in this full expansiveness, literally expanding to the fullest diameter of the universe. We'll see our conscious ego as the omnicentric singularity, or participating in that archetype of the self, and our collective unconscious mind as the encompassing horizon of the universe, where all of the absolute archetypes are superimposed on a holographic film so that they're all present at each point. World historical importance of psychoanalysis. Transference, projection is the key. So one of the most profound discoveries of psychoanalysis is this idea of projection, how human beings project our inner psychological thoughts and ideals and even our shadow onto other people. This movie, What About Bob, is about a neurotic Bob who's played by Bill Murray, and he finds Richard Dreyfuss, the Leo, the psychiatrist, and he transfers his childish adoration of his parents onto the doctor, and he drives him insane, as you see in the shadow there. By the end, it's so overwhelming that the psychiatrist wants to kill Bob. He suggests that he undergo what's called death therapy. Anyway, it's a comedy, but it's all about this idea of transference. So I'll just read from Becker's book. The patient transfers the feelings he had toward his parents as a child to the person of the physician. He blows the physician up larger than life, just as the child sees the parents. By discovering a universal predisposition at the heart of man, Freudian psychology itself gained the key to a universal underlying historical psychology. So to realize that we project the inner archetypes of the collective unconscious mind on to everyone that we meet grants psychoanalysis this world historical importance. It's this universal key that helps us understand human psychology and the way it unfolds historically. So continuing here, transference or psychological projection is a universal predisposition at the heart of our species because we are each an absolute part and parcel of the omnicentric singularity and its horizon, both of which project the holographic movie of the universe into the volume of space. If psyche equals singularity, then of course it's a universal predisposition at the heart of man to project ourselves out onto everyone we meet, because that's what a singularity does. It projects the entire universe into existence at the Big Bang, and it projects the universe, the three-dimensional hologram, the illusion of a three-dimensional world, in from the horizon of the cosmos on threads of energy all the time. The essence of the psyche is projection. Group psychology, tell me lies. So here's about adoring a leader, projecting all your needs for seeing a godlike controller, distilling the chaos of the universe into a single point. The dark side of that predisposition is worshiping sadistic tyrants and murderers. So group psychology, tell me lies. In Becker's words, here he's describing people who fall under the hypnotic spell of a cult leader. They simply became dependent children again, blindly following the inner voice of their parents, which now came to them under the hypnotic spell of the leader. They abandoned their egos to his, identified with his power, tried to function with him as an ideal. So that's Charles Manson up at the top, and that's a picture of a Nazi rally with Adolf Hitler. And these are the two examples that Becker uses. That's why I have pictures of them. Why are groups so blind and stupid? Men have always asked. Because they demand illusions. Illusions change all this. Makes man seem important, vital to the universe, immortal in some way. The masses look to the leaders to give them just the untruth they need. So I say the individual finds heroic self-expansion by identifying with the group and its leader, and is therefore willing to unleash the worst forms of sadism against others if the leader condones it. So we all want to see ourselves as immortal heroes with cosmic importance. We want to see ourselves inflated to universal proportions. It's hard for us to see ourselves as immortal heroes, so as a substitute we might worship another person and then project our own inner desire to be a cosmic hero onto that group leader and vicariously achieve immortality and heroism through the leader. And if the leader gives us that taste of immortal heroism, then we're willing to do almost anything the leader says. That's the nature of group psychology. Shadow projection, the ineradicable tendency. So here's a quote from Carl Jung from the book The Undiscovered Self. It is in the nature of political bodies always to see the evil in the opposite group, just as the individual has an ineradicable tendency to get rid of everything he does not know and does not want to know about himself by foisting it off on somebody else. Nothing has a more divisive and alienating effect upon society than this moral complacency and lack of responsibility, and nothing promotes understanding and rapprochement more than the mutual withdrawal of projections. So there's the pot calling the kettle black. This is an ineradicable tendency. You cannot uproot this tendency to project your shadow onto other people. And when you enter a group, it becomes even more ineradicable. Carl Jung said in that same book, The Undiscovered Self, that the sense of moral responsibility, of individual moral responsibility, is in an inverse proportion to the size of the group that you join. Because the more people there are, the more moral responsibility gets spread around to each one. If there's 100 people, you feel 1/100th of the sense of responsibility for what the group does. If there's 1,000,000 people, then you feel 1,000,000th% of the moral responsibility for what you do. And furthermore, you project all of the evils committed by your own group on to the enemy group. We see that everywhere at all times throughout history. In the United States of America today, you've got two parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, and both of them project their shadow onto the other. And the true believers in both parties are oblivious to this, that this is going on. And that leads to neurosis, which is a lack of self-reflection. If you see all the evil in everybody else, then you'll never address it in yourself. And that kind of moral complacency alienates you from yourself and therefore from everybody else. But the point to notice here is this is an ineradicable tendency. As gravitational singularities, we naturally project ourselves outward all the time. And that means we also project our own unacknowledged shadow side. Transference, universal phenomenon of the human mind. So here's what Becker says. No wonder Freud could say that transference was a universal phenomenon of the human mind that dominates the whole of each person's relation to his human environment. The more you fear death and the emptier you are, the more you people your world with omnipotent father figures, extra magical helpers. So here, he's not saying that there is a God, he's saying the emptier you feel and the more afraid of death you are, the more you project your inner heroism on other people, omnipotent father figures and extra magical helpers. Like the archetypal self with whom we are inconceivably one and different, each of us automatically projects the universal archetypes of the collective unconscious, father, mother, shadow, animus, wise old man, hero, etc., into all of the individual people, places, things, institutions, etc. that we meet in the three-dimensional world, the material bodies of which are themselves holographic projections from those same extra magical archetypes, all of which are superimposed at the cosmic horizon and within the omnicentric singularity. Rather than be ashamed of the fact that we unconsciously project our unconscious mind onto others, we should rejoice that we have such in-your-face evidence of our kinship with God. The picture to the left is a model of the self that's based on Carl Jung's philosophy. I'm not sure I agree with the exact way they break it down, but it includes a lot of the archetypes that Jung talks about. The archetypal self, I am saying, is the omnicentric singularity and the holographic horizon of the cosmos, and all of these archetypes are contained in that central point and out at each point of that horizon, and the material world that we experience is projected from those archetypes on fundamental threads of energy. Each of us is a gravitational singularity, and we're projecting those archetypes also. So on the one hand, everyone we meet is projected from those archetypes. Then, when we meet each other, we project those same archetypes into the three-dimensional holograms that are projected from the archetypes at the horizon of the cosmos. The more a person approximates one of these archetypes, the more likely they are to attract a projection, a transference of the archetype from within our own collective unconscious mind onto that person. So the way Becker describes this, it's as if there are no actual magical helpers. He's not assuming that there are, he's just saying that humans need to believe that there are. I'm saying that there are magical helpers. These are these archetypes, these absolute ideas in the mind of God, each of which has its own personality attached to it. Transference and the guru. So there's a dark side of transference, and that's worshiping a cult leader who can induce his followers to murder people like Charles Manson and Adolf Hitler. However, according to the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Here's the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant, without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. So if transference is this universal phenomenon of the human mind, if it's an ineradicable tendency not only to project your shadow, but to project all of your noble ideals onto other people, if that is a fact of the human psychology, then you have to find the appropriate transference object, and that is the guru, the spiritual master. The great danger, of course, is that some kind of a tyrant, some kind of a psychopath might pose as a guru, and that has clearly happened many times throughout history. So it's a dangerous thing to find the appropriate transference object to whom you can surrender and thereby find God distilled into a representative. Now, this is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He's the man who brought the Hare Krishna cult to the United States of America and from there around the world. I do not think that he was a false guru presenting himself falsely, but even in the Hare Krishna cult, some of his disciples accepted disciples and then abused them. So it's a great danger, and yet, on the other hand, according to this world-famous guru, it's the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Why you might need to find the appropriate transference object makes more sense in light of what Becker has been saying and what Carl Jung says and what psychology has discovered about the nature of the human psyche. We cannot stop projecting the archetypes onto everyone we meet. So just to reiterate this one more time, according to that logic, the best situation would be to find someone who's worthy of becoming an object upon whom we can transfer the archetype of the self, or the God archetype. This man, Swami Prabhupada, never said he's God. He says, I'm just an individual soul like everybody else, but I'm in the disciplic succession of disciples leading back to Krishna himself, or in this case, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was, according to the Gaudiya Vaishnava school of Vedanta, a form of Krishna disguised as his own devotee. That's the logic of the disciplic succession. But each disciple says, I'm not God, but you should worship me as if I am God because I'm the link to God, similar to Christianity. Although in Christianity, in the theology of the Trinity, Jesus Christ is accepted as God himself, although it's the Son of God as opposed to God the Father. At any rate, an appropriate object of transference. Jesus Christ serves that role in Christianity. In other religions, other prophets fulfill that role. I hope you are enjoying this hero's journey into the realm of philosophy, psychology, and physics. If you want to help me create more content like this, please subscribe and consider sponsoring me here on YouTube. You can also click the link to my website, psycheandsingularity.com, to sign up for a multiple choice test with over 100 well-crafted questions related to this class, and links to the specific parts of each video where the answers can be found. If you take that test to the end, you will receive a certificate indicating that you have become a Psyche and Singularity scholar. In addition to access to that test, there is also the opportunity to answer essay questions that ask you to relate concepts covered in this class to your own hero's journey. I will personally respond to each of those essays, point out any other parts of this class that I think might bolster your plan. Finally, I want to point out that this course is sponsored by the Platonic Mystery School of the Divine Infinite Being, and you can check those guys out at divineinfinitebeing.com.